Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our latest webinar. We're going to go ahead and get the party started right now. My name is Joel Marquez, and I am going to introduce our webinar with something we like to call the Under the Hood series, brought to you by Orange Blade Consultants, your one-stop shopping for all things Bluebeam, from software to solutions and training. In this series, we'd like to provide a brief look into some of those features that are under the hood of Bluebeam Revu and explore some of its less obvious features that aren't readily apparent when you first jump into the program. As usual, we're recording the session today, and within the next day, it'll be posted to orangeblade.com, and we will also post it through our social media connections on Facebook. Here's where you can find us, and Twitter. Anyone who's registered for this webinar will also receive an email alert, which will let you know when the video is available and where to find it. So we do other things too, besides giving webinars. We also sell Bluebeam, and if you have general questions about Bluebeam, just send it to this email address right here, bluebeam@orangeblade.com. And of course, we also do training. And if you're interested in training with us, you can send us an email at training@orangeblade.com. Okay, one last note. Actually, one more thing. We will be at the BIM Forum in San Diego on April 3rd through the 5th of this year, 2017, for those of you who are watching in the future. The BIM Forum is a great conference that caters to BIM professionals. So if you're interested in going, come and visit us. We'll have a booth right there. Okay, now one last thing. Everyone on the webinar is on listen-only mode. We don't really have a way to answer questions during the session, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear your questions. So lay them on us. Send those questions to us, bluebeam@orangeblade.com. Okay, so today's webinar, as you probably saw from the email notice, is brought to you by the letter B. Now, we're cheating a little bit here because we want to explore 3 different batch features of Bluebeam Revu Extreme. These will be features exclusive to the Extreme version of Revu. So you might be wondering, if your copy of Revu doesn't look like mine, you might not have the Extreme version. Now, how do you know if you have the Extreme version, or how do you know what version you have? Well, it's pretty simple. Just go up to the Help tab up here at the very top on the command bar, and you'll want to click on the About button. Now, the About button will tell you, and it'll tell you a bunch of things, but it will definitely tell you whether you have the Extreme version or if you have Bluebeam's 2 other versions of Revu, the CAD or the standard version. It'll say so right here. Also, if you ever wanted to know what your serial number is, you can look here as well. All right. So let's get started. Now, the first thing that we want to look at is the 3 things that we will be looking at today regarding the batch features are the overlay features that Bluebeam provides a batch function for, as well as links, and we'll also be looking at slip sheeting. So before we go further, we want to ask, what does batch mean? Well, batch is just a list of features that help automate functions we would normally have to do one at a time. So let's look at that first example that we wanted to talk about, the overlay function. So overlay is a feature in Revu that lets us compare 2 pages and highlight differences between the 2. It does this by letting us stack the 2 pages that we want to compare on top of each other, which is a little bit like putting two sheets on top of a light table. Now, the benefit to this is that typically if we have a set of plans that maybe an original plan and then someone gives us a revision, we want to know what the differences are between the two. And by putting the two sheets on top of each other, traditionally, if we put it on a light table, we can generally figure out which page belongs to which. But putting two sheets that are colored with a black ink on a white background doesn't really help us distinguish what the newer version is and what the older one is. So here's how Bluebeam lets us handle that kind of comparison. So we're going to do this. The manual version of this overlay step, and then we'll see how Bluebeam Extreme allows us to batch multiple overlay pairs together. Okay, so we have this sheet right here. This is an original. Now we want to find a revision for it. So we'll go over to our revision page. So let's say that somebody's just given us this page right here. We can see it's the revision because it says Rev 1. Okay, so we can look at these and we can even split our screen and look at them side by side, but it doesn't really tell us what's changed. So we're going to use the overlay function to show how it's changed. So we'll go over here to the command bar and click on Document, and then we'll click on the Comparison menu button and choose the Overlay Pages selection. Okay, now we want to make sure that we're comparing the right files, so I'm going to hit the Add Open Files button, and it'll choose all the files that I currently have open, but I don't want this my slide deck to be part of the comparison, so I'm just going to click on it and hit the X to get rid of it. So now I have the two files that are that make sense to compare together. Now, what I want to do here is to make sure, and this is how Bluebeam allows us to see the differences between the two. We want to choose, we want to allow Bluebeam Revu to change the color of each of the documents to two different colors, and that way, when it puts them on top of each other, we will be able to tell what the differences are. Now, this red color here belongs to the original, and this blue color here belongs to the revision, but I may not want to use blue here. I may want to have two colors that are at opposite ends of the color wheel, so that, and you'll see why that will make a difference. But I'm going to click on this first and then hit the Modify button, and I want to change the color to green. Now, the reason we want to do this is because the intention is to not only show us what's changed, but we also want to see what hasn't changed. And by choosing two colors at the opposite end of the color wheel, we know that when we combine them, they're going to become black. And that means that anytime we see any black, it means that nothing's changed. But if we see that, if we see on our overlay that there's some red showing, it means that something was subtracted from the revision. And if we see anything that's green, we see that something was added. So we're going to hit the OK button here and let Bluebeam Revu process this. And it's going to create a third page that it titles Overlay. And we can see here that wherever we see the green color, it means that something was added. But we also see a little bit of red, and that means that this part here was subtracted. We can also see down over here that part of this wall was subtracted as well. Okay, so that's a quick overview on how overlay works. And this is generally something that's fairly well known with most Bluebeam users, but the trick is, what if you have a number of of pairs of pages that you want to overlay. So for example, if you've got a large file set and somebody hands you, let's say, 5, 10, 20 revisions, what you'd really like to do is automate that process so you don't have to manually do each pair one at a time. Okay, so let's walk through this right now. Let me unsplit my screen and close out this overlay page. Now, all of Bluebeam's batch functions are contained under the File menu tab in the command bar, and you'll see this Batch menu button, and that reveals all the batch features that we have available to us. We can see that it's a lot more than the 3 we're going to talk about today, but the important thing to consider is that if you don't see these menu options here, it means that you don't have Bluebeam Revu Extreme. So again, Bluebeam Revu Extreme is the only place you're going to find the features we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so we'll click on Overlay Pages. And that gives us this weird-looking dialog box. Now, what the program is prompting us to do is to add pages that we consider to be the original pages. And I'm going to do that right now by clicking on the Add button. So I'm going to go to my Originals folder and find the files that I want to work with. Okay, so here are the pages that are the originals. And I'll hit the Open button. Now, Revu is not actually opening the files at this point. It's just adding them to this list right here. Okay, now the second dialog box is prompting us for what the revision pages are. So I'm going to hit the Add button, and then I'm going to go to my revision page. Now, we can see here that the revision pages are named appropriately. We can see there's a Rev 1, so we know that this is the second or the first revision of these particular pages, and the file names pretty much match what we saw in the originals folder. Now, this is not always the case. So if you're a real-time or an actual real-world user, you probably have come across file naming conventions that are not always consistent. So Bluebeam does have a method of dealing with various naming conventions, even in a mix of files like this. So we actually have a plan right here, a plan sheet, that doesn't have the Rev1 tag associated with it. I'm going to choose all these pages here and hit the Open button. And Revu does add all the pages to our list here. Now, having compiled all these pages, we know that we want to take these pages here and create an overlay page for each of the pages that we have here. But how do we know that the program is going to match the pages appropriately? Well, there is a method that Bluebeam uses to do this. The first principle that it uses is the file name. So that's one way to do it, and then the particular page in the file if you're dealing with multi-page files. So that's one way it handles the matching process. But this is a pull-down menu, so we can actually choose different options. So if we had pages that we want to match by their page label, and the page label is the name of the page itself as viewed in the Thumbnails tab. So over here on the Thumbnails tab, we can see there's the page label right there. We can also choose a region of the page. Now, this is a kind of an interesting feature that allows us to grab information somewhere in the page and use that as our matching principle. This is a feature that I'll go into a little more detail later when we talk about linking. But if you can't use the file name or the page label, and you need to use something consistent that's on, let's say, the title block of each of your pages, page region is the way to go for that. Now, you may also have a different revision naming system than the one that Bluebeam assumes that you're using. If you do, you can hit this advanced button right here and use the kind of a filter that allows you to choose, using wildcards, what you're going to be sorting for. Now, the thing is, Bluebeam does have a pretty wide set of match options that is built into the program. And chances are, if you're using anything, anything that makes sense, Bluebeam may have already accounted for it. So you may just want to leave that blank and see if the matching system works. We're going to do that right now. I'm going to hit the match button. And then Bluebeam creates this dialog box here, which shows us how it matches each file to each other. Okay, so I'm going to expand this a little bit and move this column over so we can see how the sorting system worked. Now we can see that for every page that we referenced, Bluebeam also matched the page to its revision by using this tag at the end as its reference. But we can also see that even though the program didn't have a tag to refer to for this file, it still was able to successfully match these two pages together because they have the same name. Now, if you generate a match page like this and you find that there are some discrepancies, you can always change the order of the overlays by clicking on the page in question and hitting the up or down arrow buttons as needed. Hopefully, if you maintained a common naming convention that is consistent through the life of each revision, then you won't have to do this too often, or at all, hopefully. But just know that you're not locked into using the matching that Bluebeam uses. You can also change it in this dialog box. Okay, now I actually just deleted that just to make this a little simpler so it won't go as long. Now, to generate your overlay pages, you will want to pick a folder to output the files to. Now I've picked this folder right here. Let me just make sure that there's nothing in it. And when I hit the OK button, then it's going to generate an overlay page for each of the files, each of the matched files that we have listed here. Now this is going pretty quickly because there are only 5 pages that we were looking at, but imagine having, a 100-page document. This is a lot easier than doing it manually. Now, Bluebeam also has a way of generating a report for each of the matches that you've created, so that you can keep track of how the matches went. If we drill down into this, we can see exactly what the pages were that got overlaid, what the current page was, and what the revision page was, and that's what the report is going to look like if we were to generate a report. But we won't. Okay, so just for reference, we'll just take a look at one of these pages from the output folder. And we can see that, that there's the overlay. Okay, so that kind of establishes the principle of how batch works. We're able to automate a process for many pages that would ordinarily take us quite a long time to do if we were to do them separately using the feature that exists in the program. So let's take a look at another feature called slip sheeting. So if any of you have tried to do this process before, again, going back to the idea of having to deal with revisions, we might run into an issue where we want to integrate revision files to our plan set, but not lose any of the work that we might have already put into it. So let's say, for example, and I'm going to close out of these files over here. So let's say, for example, that we have a let's say, for example, that we have a file that we've been working on. We've had multiple teams look at a file like this and make comments on it. But then a revision file comes in and changing the underlying content, but we already have a lot of comments that we've made here. We don't want to lose them. Now, if we were to just overwrite this page with the new page, it will get rid of all of our comments. Now, Bluebeam has a feature in the program that allows us to take out the underlying content, but leave all the work that we put into it behind. So let's walk through this process right now before we go into the batch version of it. So this is again, a slip sheeting process, but there's no real slip sheet. There's no real manual slip sheet feature that we can search for. What Bluebeam makes us do is go over to the document menu and go to the Pages menu button and choose Replace Pages. Now, we want to find the relevant page here from, so let's say we've gotten our revision page right here. We want to take the original content. We want to slip this revision in without losing the markups that we've added. So I'll just hit the Open button. And the program prompts us, it asks us, here's the current page. So ordinarily, the default is that it's just going to take the new page and then just erase whatever is in the current page. But we have this checkbox right here, and this checkbox allows us to do the slip sheeting. So if I choose this, Replace Page Content Only, it means that the underlying content is going to be removed and replaced with the new content, but the markups will remain. So if I hit the OK button right now, it doesn't look like anything's changed, but in actuality, I've just taken out the original and replaced it with the revision, leaving the markups behind. So that's another example of a process that we pretty much have to do page by page in earlier versions of Bluebeam or in versions of Bluebeam that are not the extreme version. So now, because we have the extreme version, I'm going to go ahead and walk through the process of doing this function using the batch features. So let's go back up over to the File menu tab and select the Batch menu button. Okay, so we'll choose the Slip Sheet option, and you'll recognize the dialog box that appears. It looks pretty much the same as the overlay dialog box. So same principle applies. We are going to want to take our current pages and add them. So let's do that. So I have a bunch of my original files right here, which I'll add. And then I'll add my revised pages. Okay, now, just as with the previous example in the overlay section, we want to match our slip-sheeted pages to the current pages. So we'll just hit the match button, assuming that we have all of our match criteria set up properly. And it gives us that same dialog box. Again, matching them in the same manner that we looked at before, where it took either the revision tag at the end of the file name or just the same file name that we were using for both files. Now, we're not going to have an output folder because we're not creating a third document for each of these pages. We're actually going to be overwriting the original pages from the current folder. So there are a couple things that we can do here now. We can either choose the replace current pages with revised pages option, which is what we were doing when we had to do each pair separately as a manual slip sheet. But we also have another option here. So let's take a look at what we have. Insert revised pages before current pages. Okay, now that sounds interesting. So to explore this for a second, when we choose the insert revised pages before current pages option, it means that the program is going to take the revision page and add it to the document. So each of these are one-page documents, which means that if we choose this option, we're going to end up with two-page documents. Now, that could get a little bit confusing because while it would be nice to know what the original looked like, as well as the revision, we might mistakenly make a mistake and refer to the original page when we really wanted to make a decision based on the revision page. And that's why we have this checkbox here that appears when we choose this option. Stamp current pages superseded. Now what that actually does is to take the current page and make a big stamp on it that says superseded. And that means that hopefully no one will make the mistake of having to make a decision based on an outmoded page. Okay, so you can choose one or the other. So for this example, we'll choose insert revised pages before current pages. Now we also have a couple other options here that are worth visiting. The copy markups from current pages to revised pages, obviously that shows that takes those markups and adds them in the same position to the revised pages. We also have unflatten markups before copy, and the question here is, what happens to markups that have been flattened in the document, and are those able to be carried forward into the copied page? And it's a little bit of a complicated question. We have to delve into the nature of flattened or unflattened markups. But if you worked with flattened markups before, you might know that Bluebeam has a feature that allows your flattened markups to be unflattened. It's actually a checkbox, and I'll show you after I hit the OK button here. If you have this option turned on, if you allow for markup recovery, which is the name for the checkbox, then this feature will work. But if you assume that your flattened markups will be if you want your flattened markups to be unflattened before you copy them, and you never had that allow markup recovery checkbox turned on, then it won't be treated as a markup that you can unflatten. Okay, now, and then flatten markups after copy simply flattens the markup and makes it uneditable after the copy is made. So this is particularly useful if you if you don't want any downstream users to make any changes to their markups after they receive the slip-sheeted copy. Okay, so I'll just hit the OK button right now. And then it'll go through the process of slip sheeting. So we can see here's, again, just like with the overlay feature, we have a report page which tells you exactly what happened. And if we wanted to make a report, we can do that. But we don't. Now let's take a look at one of those pages. Okay, so here's our slip-sheeted copy. And let me see if I can find another one. Actually, I think I copied this to the wrong directory. Hang on a second. Okay, so that's the slip sheeting feature, and so the last thing that we want to look at today is the linking features in Revu. So one of the issues that we have with large document sets is being able to navigate through them easily. I'm going to open up a file here that will demonstrate that. So we have a document over here that is about 35 pages. And if we want to navigate through this, we don't necessarily know what we're looking for. We can look at this table of contents over here and say that if we wanted to look at level 2, part of the architectural set, we can, we'll have to find the A202 sheet, but we don't necessarily know what page it's on. So if this is the document that we've been given, it doesn't really help us navigate through it easily. So one way to help streamline the navigation is to find a way to appropriately name each of these pages so it matches something like this table that we have here. Now, each of the sheets typically has a sheet name in the lower right-hand corner. And remember I mentioned in one of the earlier sections about the page region option. It's a feature in Revu that allows us to grab a section of a page and then and use that to base some kind of information on. Typically what we would do is look for the sheet name in the title block, and it's typically down here, but it could be anywhere depending on the way that the architect set it up. Okay, now this is this page region feature, this ability to scan the section, a common section of the title block. This is something that Bluebeam calls AutoMark. So I'm going to demonstrate this right now by way of showing us how to make a more navigable document. So if we go to the Thumbnails tab and click on this button right here, Create Page Labels, we can hit the Page Region button and hit Select, and then draw a rectangle around a sheet name. And we're going to assume that this rectangle will have the same information for every page. So if we hit the OK button right now, and then make sure that our page range says all and hit the OK button again, then it's going to generate whatever is in this part of the document for every page. And as we can see here, now each page is named appropriately. Okay, so that gets us closer to our goal of making it more navigable. But wouldn't it be nice if we could take, let's say, this table right here and just navigate directly to the page we want just by clicking on it? So this is a feature called hyperlinking. It's a feature that's typically available for most PDF programs, but Bluebeam has a way of, Bluebeam has a lot of extra features that allow it to be more easily used. But let me demonstrate the simplest way of creating a hyperlink. If I wanted to take the A201 page and make it so that I can click on it and it'll take me to that page, I'll go over to the Markup menu tab and click on the Hyperlink button. And I can either draw a rectangle around A202, or as we can see, when I hover my pointer over A202 or any text, it turns into a text tool. So I can actually swipe that text, and then this dialog box comes up. Now, from here, I can say that I want the action that comes from me clicking on that rectangle. I want the action to jump me to the page that I want it to go to. So A202 is actually page 4. So if I make page 4 the jump to location and then hit OK, now if I click on the link, it takes me there. All right, now that is Hyperlinking 101. You may have figured out how to do this already. But of course, the documents are a little more complex than just linking from a title page. In fact, we have a lot of these callouts over here. It'd be nice if I clicked on this and have it take me to A300. So it's not just the pages. It's not just kind of a one-dimensional table of contents that we want to work with. We really wanted to take all references of each of the pages and link them to each other. Now, the way that Bluebeam accomplishes this, instead of having us go through each of the links and create a separate link laboriously, Revu has search features that are built into the program that allow it to search for all references of a particular set of characters and generate hyperlinks based on that. So we're going to take advantage of that, and Bluebeam has automated that for us with its batch linking functionality. So we're going to go over to the File menu tab again and click on the Batch menu button and choose Link. Now, since this is the first time I've done this in this document, I'm going to choose New, and we get this dialog box. So we want to add files to this document. So I'm just going to hit the Add Files button, and it's going to prompt me for the file in question, which is this file right here. And I'll hit Next. Now, it takes us to this dialog box right here. Now, remember, what the program is going to do is it's going to want to find some way, some search term that it needs to look for in order to generate the hyperlinks. Now, because all of the references that we're using are based on the sheet name that we found over here, we wanted to use sheet names as our search term. So we can do this in a number of different ways. We can either choose the page label option over here, which will take the page labels and generate a search term for each of the page labels. Or we can choose a page region. So that'll let us redraw that area that we had generated before. But since we already did it in order to create the page label, we're just going to choose page label. Now the program's nice enough to show us whether our search term is going to be worthwhile. So it helpfully chooses a preview that tells us this is the kind of search term that it'll be looking for. So we know that this works because that's the first page of our document. So we can go ahead and let the program generate the search terms that it's going to be using. Now, we're not creating our links yet. We are just going to have the program generate what it's going to use to search for in order to create the links. And we'll hit the generate button and have it do that. So right now, what it's doing is taking each page label and making a separate search term for it. So that means that the program is going to look for all occurrences of each of these search terms, and wherever it finds it, it's going to generate a hyperlink to the page that it's referring to. So we have a 35-page document. We have 35 different search terms that it's going to be looking for. Now, when I hit the run button, it's going to execute the searches and generate a link for each search hit. So that's what it's doing right now. It's going through each page, searching for the text in question, and then at the end, it's going to give us a report, because it always loves to give us reports at the end of a batch function. But here we go. It says that there are 128 hyperlinks created, 1 hyperlink deleted. That's because the one that we just created was on top of a hyperlink that it was going to add. So it deleted it because it didn't want to have conflicting information in there. So I'll hit the finish and close button. And now when I look over here to my title block, my table here, each of these are hyperlinked. We can see that because the mouse pointer turns from a hand to a hand that's pointing on a link. So if I click on A201 now, it jumps to A201. But now look at all these callouts over here. Here's one that points to a detail. So this is a callout that points to a detail. This link didn't exist before, but when I click on it, it jumps to my detail page. Now, this is I'm going to add a little quick tip here for those of you who like using hyperlinks to navigate through your documents. Hyperlinks let us move forward in the document, but if you wanted to go back to where you clicked from, you want to use this button over here. This is down here at the bottom next to the page number button, or the page number field. If you click on this button, it takes you to the previous view. So whatever you were looking at last, it will take you to. So I'll click on this left arrow button, and it takes me back to what I had clicked from. Okay, but the takeaway here, though, is that this batch linking feature has now hyperlinked my entire document. It generated 120 some odd hyperlinks in just a couple seconds, which saved us all the time from us having to do it ourselves. So that really is the essence of batch hyperlinking.